Welcome into IDP Drafts. I am your host, Evan Ringler, and I'm here tonight with Jackson Schwam. Tonight, we're going to be covering the 8 IDPs we can't stop drafting. Jackson, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jackson, this is a follow-up to an article that you just released on the IDPshow.com. So you guys can go check that out, and we're going to be covering some different players in here and some of the same. All right, let's get it started. Jackson, how do you treat exposure in general when it comes to IDP best ball?
Yeah, I'm still kind of figuring out my formula of the exact sort of breakdown of exposure of how I want to go about these drafts. But one thing I've definitely noticed is I have a lot of these sort of mid-tier linebackers, or I have a lot of shares of these mid-tier linebacker sort of things in the rounds like 4 through 8 type of deal, because I really am focusing like the edge rushers early on, just because I think there's less depth at that position, and I want to snag some of those really premier guys. So that's one thing for sure. And then the other thing, which we definitely harp on, but just has been punting DB a little bit. If I'm not getting like, a Derwin James in the first couple of rounds, or, Anton Winfield kind of thing, I've definitely been punting the DBs. So I'm seeing heavy exposures of those mid-tier linebackers right now for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think, exposure is a big talking point when it comes to offensive best ball. There's not as much talk about it when it comes to IDP because it's a newer thing. The way I kind of treat it is that I am much more willing to go get my guys when it comes to IDP, because there are much fewer drafts happening and we just know less about IDP versus offense. I think that the ADP is relatively inefficient, and you can just go get your guys. I'm willing to go over 50% with certain players even. But I will say that most of my guys that I are highly exposed to are rounds 10 and later generally. And those are, dual Desi guys and DBs that I get in most of my drafts.
Totally.
How do you treat those DBs at the end of the draft? Are you frequently picking the same guys, or do you really try to diversify when it comes to those later DBs?
Yeah, I'll talk about one of these guys that I have quite a few shares of, but I've been mixing it up, man, to be totally honest. Wait until that kind of like round 16, 17 mark, I feel like, and kind of seeing who's on the board and going from there. But just with punting DBs, I have been kind of mixing it up, I find. But yeah, there are a couple guys, some sleepers, and then, some more kind of premier players that I have higher exposure on. But for the most part, it's been kind of scattered across my drafts for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah.
What about you?
I think I have a few DBs that I target heavily when it comes to like rounds 20 or 18 to 22, somewhere in there. But after that, when I'm just taking, 10 DBs in a row, 14 DBs in a row even, you really have to mix it up and just get guys that are going to be on the field. I think that's usually my strategy.
100%. Better.
All right, Jax. Sure. Let's just dive right in. Who is your first player that you can't stop drafting?
The guy that I can't stop drafting, and this is one of those guys that was in the article, so if you've already read it, I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of sound like a broken fiddle here, but Lavonte David, he's one of these guys where I think there's a bit of a discount just given the age. But, like I said it in my article, really, it felt like a steal every time I was drafting him. In I think 5 shares total of Lavonte in 8 drafts that I've done so far. In 4 of those drafts, I got him in the 4th round, the earliest being pick 404, the latest being in the 5th at pick 501. So it's right in that kind of 4 to 5, 4th to 5th round range. Sorry. And like at that point, I'm more than comfortable, selecting a vet that's been scoring year after year and really has just shown how consistent he is. If you look at Lavonte's stats over his career, he's never actually recorded less than 100 tackles in a season when he's playing 14 games or more. So if he's healthy and he's on the field, which is most of the time anyways, he's getting you 100 tackles. So that's a nice floor for a linebacker. But, he does mix in the big plays too. Last season was one of his best yet. He got 4.5 sacks and a forced fumble. really just solid analytically, nothing kind of eye popping, but PFF defensive grade is 72.3. So he's solid. That's good for 25th amongst linebackers. And the other thing with Lavonte is I just don't see a whole lot changing with his situation. With Devin White going to Philly, I think he still is the top dog there. You got KJ Britt, who I like a lot, but he doesn't threaten Lavonte David in any way. Like Lavonte is still going to be the leader of that defense, playing in every down role. So to get that guy in the fourth, kind of fifth turn there, and a lot of the times he's kind of my LB1 after taking a few edge rushers. I'm totally comfortable with that, and it kind of explains the heavy exposure for me.
Yeah, I love that take. Lavonte is one of those guys where you know exactly what you're going to get. He probably won't finish as a top 5 linebacker, but you know that he's going to finish as a top 20 linebacker every single year.
It's a bit of a floor play, right? Like in a way, it's not like you're not shooting for the stars, but he's a guy that's he's not gonna kill you every week. That's for sure.
Yeah. And for me, in these 31 round best ball drafts, it's a marathon. You really need to get, I like floor players in that format, especially at linebacker. I don't want to be taking massive upside swings for guys that we don't know if they're going to play or we don't know if they're going to produce. I'd rather just get the veteran who we know exactly what he's going to give you. And it might not be elite, but it's going to be very good.
Absolutely.
All right, now we're going to move to my first player. And if you've ever drafted with me, you know what's coming up. I had to talk about him. It's kind of a running gimmick at this point. We're talking about Dexter Lawrence.
Sexy
he's sexy Dexy. He's the king of PFF numbers. He's 342 pounds of steel and sex appeal. The numbers, for me, it comes down to the PFF numbers. Last year, he ranked 3rd in pressure rate. These are among D tackles, 3rd in pressure rate, 1st in PFF grade, 1st in pass rush grade, 3rd in run defense grade, 1st in win rate. So we know that he is just an incredible player, really top of the line, one of the best in the league. Now, he really hasn't been producing like that, at least last year. In 2022, he had 13 points per game, but last year it dropped off to 9.6. I think that this decrease was due to a pulled hammy in week 11. You saw his snap share decrease significantly after that. And then also just variance in pressure to sack rate. Sexy Dexy converted under 10% of his pressures into sacks, which is probably going to regress. His current ADP is 60th overall, but he frequently falls in the 6th round or later. And admittedly, I am definitely propping up that ADP myself. In some of the earlier drafts, I was taking him in like round 3 or round 4. But now he routinely falls to round 6. And it seems that anytime I decide to pass on him, he always comes right back to me. I just can't get away from sexy Dexter.
He finds you. Yeah. I got so a question I have for you then, Evan, with the DT that you have, obviously like a high share of type of deal, what do you kind of say to people, or how do you explain the process behind going DT over someone like the dual Desi guys, like the edge rushers? Because I think when you look at the DTs, there's certainly the floor is there, but I'm not sure if the ceiling is quite the same. If you look at these guys like Jermaine Johnson or something like that, like along that vein of these dual Desi guys that are edge rushers, what's the appeal with the D tackles?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the edges going around Dexter right now are Uchenna Nwosu, Jalen Phillips, Jared Verse, Boye Mafe, Dallas Turner, Josh Sweat. All of these guys, I really just don't feel that comfortable about. If you told me that they would finish as like the 36th DB in a season, I wouldn't be shocked at all. But they do probably have similar upside to Dexter, but I think Dexter really does have that, maybe not game-breaking upside like TJ Watt, but that top 12 D lineman upside that can really compete with those edge rushers, and it gives you a better floor. Just
Absolutely.
Because we know how amazing of a player he is.
100%. And it's that 60.6 ADP too, right? Like we were just talking about Lavonte, that's 10 picks later. You could be getting a guy, like you said, who's putting up the sacks and getting you those kind of week winning numbers, right? With the big play. So nope, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I will say that it depends on your build. Oftentimes it does feel better to go linebacker there if you go edges early. It just depends.
Absolutely.
All right, Jackson, who's your second player you can't stop drafting?
Yeah, the second player I can't stop drafting. It's going to be the one DB I'll talk about today. It's Jevon Holland. And yet, no, it's not because he's a fellow Canadian like me. I do love him for that reason. But no, Holland's just a rising star in the NFL, really. He has demonstrated that he's a premier player in this league. So he actually was the third ranked safety on PFF last year. So the analytics are starting to show that as well. The one thing with Holland, I would say, is he hasn't put up like the eye-popping numbers over the season yet, but I think we've kind of gotten glimpses of the type of upside he can offer. Looking back, to week 1 last season, like 14 tackles, which is, crazy as a DB. So if he's putting those kind of numbers up a little more consistently next season, that could be like a league winner at where you're getting him. Looking at the ADP right now, he's DB 18, pick 168 overall. So I like the upside there at that range. Just looking at my own drafts, like the earliest I reached for him was pick 1308, the latest coming in at 1701. So that kind of gives you like a range of around 15. I think ideally you want to get him, or if you want to get him, that's where you got to kind of pick him. And I think like just in terms of value, round 15 is a great spot for him. So out of all those kind of DBs I'm looking at, if I'm punting, the Hamiltons, the Derwin James, and the Winfield type of guys, I'm super happy waiting to round 15 and picking up Jevon Holland.
Yeah, I love that call out. I think that no one really talks about Jevon Holland, but he can do everything. He is truly one of the best safeties in the league. And although we haven't really seen the elite IDP production yet, I know that it's in him for sure. So I'm really hoping it happens this year.
Me too, man.
And he's, 15th round. Around that area, you're looking at, edge rushers where you don't know if they're going to play, or D tackles with no upside, or linebackers with no floor. I love swinging. Maybe you're going DB a couple rounds earlier than you would usually, but in the 15th round, I love that pick. All righty. My second player tonight is another one that's near and dear to my heart, and that is Za'Darius Smith with an ADP of 115.6. Again, we're going to go to the PFF metrics. Among 48 edge rushers with 400-plus pass rush snaps last year, Za'Darius ranked 10th in pressure rate, 9th in pass rush grade, and 8th in true pass set win rate. The reason that he had a disappointing year, I think everyone would agree with that he was very disappointing last year. He converted less than 10% of his pressures into sacks, and I love targeting those kind of guys because that variance is bound to regress. And yes, he is getting up there in age, but the situation is perfect. He's going to see a lot of snaps next to Myles Garrett, who takes all the double teams. And all we need is for Za'Darius to get a little bit more sack luck in order for him to really pay off this ADP. He's also someone that I love in redraft leagues too, because you can kind of play him as part of a D-line rotation and just play him against good matchups. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of him that way. I will say that the one drawback for Za'Darius is he doesn't really have a tackle floor at this point in his career. But I would argue that in the 10th round, I don't really care that much about weekly floor and best ball. I'm really just looking for that season-long floor and upside. And I think he brings that.
100%, man. And like looking at the ADP there, like 115, he had 10 sacks in 2022. So 2 seasons ago. And, I think there, like you're kind of rolling the dice. If you can get something close to that, like double-digit sacks at this point in the draft, that's awesome. And just in terms of best ball, like those are big plays that, like we talked about, can win you your week. So I'm all for that. The only trepidation I've had with Za'Darius, I guess, is just There was a little bit of talk of an injury in camp, but I guess we recently found out it's not as serious. Or do you have an update on that?
I do not have an update on that. It's that time of year where there's injury news about seemingly every player, and I don't know what's smoke and what's fire.
Yeah, I think I saw that he was like, it wasn't as bad as they originally thought. So point being, like, there's not really any worry, I think, about him starting the season. So pick 115, like that's a great pick there, man. I like
he
the
is one of
upside
those
swing too.
guys. He is one of those guys where if he pulls a hammy, it could just totally ruin this pick.
What is he? 32? He's 31. Yeah, he's almost 32, so he's getting there for sure. Like he's getting older.
Definitely,
he's in that
there is some
range.
injury risk, definitely.
Yeah,
although he has been a pretty healthy player throughout the last few years.
Absolutely, he had 16 games last year, 16 games the year before. It was really only 2021 where he missed. It looks like almost the entire season there. But like since 2019, besides that outlier, like he's been on the field, which is good for sure.
Yep. All right, Jax. Player number 3. Who do you got?
I'm going with my boy Arik Armstead. So this is a guy I had 63% exposure share. So out of my 8 drafts I've done so far, came away with him in 5 of them. I mean, really, you just gotta look at that ADP, like 261. I was basically getting him almost in the last round in some of these drafts. I got him as low as pick 2703, actually. And these are like 31 round drafts, right? So I like that a lot, just with the upside that he brings. His pass rush grade last year, 86.5. And I know that's a bit of a smaller sample size because he was dealing with an injury. But, in that time he was on the field, I think he really showed his stuff. And that was good for 5th amongst interior defenders on PFF. So, he was in that top echelon for sure. And it's just kind of his fit with the Jaguars because, like watching a lot of the Jaguars, it's very clear that Trayvon and Josh Allen are phenomenal players. And I still don't think either guy really gets enough attention. But a lot of it is like, they're doing their job and the Jaguars just aren't really generating any pressure on the inside. Like they have some respectable guys like Devon Hamilton at the nose tackle, and they got Roy Robertson Harris there, but they've really been lacking that stud in the middle that can generate pressure that allows, Trayvon and Josh Hines-Allen to finish those plays and to get the sacks. So I think they're going to lean on Armstead a lot. I think, like double-digit sacks aren't necessarily out of the question. The huge X factor with this guy is just his health. Like he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I think, I understand the discount given his health, but like round 27, man, I'm totally willing to roll the dice and just see if I can get that 1 year where, he plays 14 games or something. And maybe they got a couple of weeks where he puts up 2 sacks and that wins me a week type of deal. So I'm comfortable with him there for sure.
Yep. I love this pick again. You're just nailing it. Yeah. I just saw that he got it activated off the pup today too. So that's great news.
Yeah. I think he should be good for week 1. So that's exciting for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, despite his advanced age, I really do think that he's still maybe not an elite player, but a very good player who will take attention from offensive coordinators because he really can be a wrecking ball, I think. And yeah, maybe it's a small outcome for him to get to double-digit sacks, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got to 8 or 9.
So I'm hoping, man. Pick 2703 there. I feel like if you're sniffing around that range, like that kind of feels like a win with that value because that's somebody that, will contribute in weeks in the best ball. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, real quick, I just wanted to backtrack. I forgot to talk about how many shares I have of these guys. Dexter Lawrence, I have 9 shares across 15 leagues, and Za'Darius, I have 8 shares across 15 leagues. So both of those guys are over 50%.
Heavy exposure.
Oh, yeah. And the last guy that I have over 50% is a DB, actually. Desmond King. So Desmond King joined the Texans last year in week 11 and immediately assumed close to a full-time slot role. And he was also incredibly efficient with those snaps. Among the 200 DBs last year that played 400 or more snaps, Desmond King ranked first in tackle rate, first in tackle opportunity rate, and first in sweet spot rate, which is basically box snaps, slot snaps, D-line snaps, because we don't want guys that are playing cornerback or free safety. Those don't generate tackles like the slot does. And he also did that despite an above average percentage of his snaps being pass rush. So he does bring a little bit of that sack upside as well, which I love, and a very high tackle floor. Entering 2024, King looks primed to assume that full-time slot role again. He's also listed as a potential returner for the Texans, and he does have over 2,400 career return yards as a pro. I don't think that that's going to come to fruition, but there is a chance. So I mention it.
It's gravy, man, if you can get it, right? The return yards, like just one other factor to look at these guys. And like you said, I think the tackle floor with him, like I'm just looking back at some of these years, like 2021, he puts up 93 combined tackles. And then it looks like that's just in 12 starts too. And then 89 the next year. So he's definitely shown that he can kind of sniff around that 100 tackle mark, which is really, that's great for a DB, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know, he's going after round 20. So he's a guy that when round 20 comes along, I'm just hitting Desmond King every time as one of my first few DBs that I draft, because we love that slot role, and he has that, and he also brings some added upside with potential sacks and maybe even return yards.
Absolutely. I like that one.
Yep. All right. Player number 4, who do you got?
I have my man, some call him the outlaw, Josey Jewell. So linebacker for the Carolina Panthers. This was a guy I wish I had a little bit more of by now, and all of a sudden done 38% exposure, pardon me. So I think that's 3 shares out of 8 in my drafts. He's one of my favorite linebackers going into the season. I feel like part of the reason being, like, he was a guy I followed a couple of years ago, had him on a couple of my teams when he had that great year with Denver, you know, put up the big sacks and everything. That's the thing with Josey. He's shown that not only is the tackle floor nice with him, but he's also got the potential to give you some big playability, both in the interception column and with sacks. Just looking at kind of where I've got him, though, the earliest I reached for him was around pick 508. And a couple other drafts, I got him at around 604, 605. So he's really kind of a 6th round type of linebacker. And, you know, that's relevant for me in my drafting strategy because it really falls kind of into that same vein as Lavonte David, where if I'm waiting on linebacker, you know, I'm skipping the Foyers, the Roquans, Fred Warner, going edge rusher for even my first 3 picks, maybe. You know, I can look to rounds 4 through 6 and target these guys like Lavonte David and Josey Jewell, who, for me personally, like, I think they honestly have a shot at being top 10 linebackers if the stars align. One of the big things for Josey is getting back to the Panthers and having his old DC, Ejiro Evero. Evero was his DC back in Denver when he had that big breakout year. He absolutely stuffed the stat sheet that year, like 127 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 2 picks. And the best part about all that is it was just 13 games too. So like breaking that down on a points per game basis, it's even crazier. I mean, looking at 2023 though, you know, it's a bit of a down year in comparison. But Evero had moved on to the Panthers, so his usage wasn't quite the same, but, you know, still recorded 108 tackles, still got in that big play column with 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. So, you know, that's a guy that he's going to be wearing the green dot for Carolina, most likely, playing in every down role. You know, they obviously have shown they liked him, giving him a 3-year, $18.75 million contract. And he's going to a situation where he has some familiarity going back to his old DC Evero. So that's the guy that, you know, getting him in the 6th round, I like that a lot because I honestly feel like he has top 10 upside.
Yeah, he's a certified stud. I wouldn't be shocked if he even got into the top 5, honestly. We know that he's going to play every single snap. There really isn't a whole lot of competition there. I mean, Shaq Thompson is washed and injured. Trevin Wallace I like, but he's probably not a factor as a rookie, especially competing with Jewell. We know that he'll play every snap, and like you said, he just produces. He produces points. And Yeah, I love that pick. And honestly, his ADP should be higher. I don't know why it's that low.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I feel like, like you said, just with the upside and the every down roll, 73.2 there does feels a bit low. I'm happy to get him though.
All righty. My next player I have 7 shares of, and that is Dennis Gardeck. Dennis Gardeck has an ADP of 234.7. He's got the dual Desi tag on Sleeper, I believe, which is D lineman 115 overall. Last year, Gardeck ranked 3rd in pressure rate, 16th in pass rush grade, 20th in true pass set win rate, and 3rd in tackle rate. So he's got both the pass rushing and the tackle floor, which we love to see.
Absolutely.
As we head into 2024, that Cardinals depth chart is barren. There is nobody there. It's just really him and Zaven Collins. So he's going to play. Yeah, he's going to play a full-time role for the first time in his career. And I think he will produce, even though, we would like a little bit more help on that line just to, draw some attention away from him. But even despite that, I think that he will continue to produce in terms of tackles and sacks. I honestly don't understand this ADP at all. He's going like round 20, which I think is pretty crazy.
That's
absurd. I've just been scooping him up.
I feel like that's gonna level out a bit, hey, following the BJ Ojulari injury. Like that's obviously gonna give him some more playing time. I'm with you. That 234 is just kind of absurd. That's got to level down, I think, a little bit in the next couple of weeks. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Speaking of leveling out the ADP, we are running IDP Madness right now. The tournament is close to filling up, but you still have a chance to get in. Come to the IDPshow.com and sign up for that. It's going to be a blast. There's going to be a massive prize pool, which the IDP show is adding money to itself. So it's not just your money, but you can come take our money. Come sign up.
It's a blast.
Draft with us. Yes, it is. Last year, my team did not do well. How did yours do? Do you remember?
I don't remember, which is a bad sign. So not great, my man. This is a comeback year for both of us, buddy.
Yes, it is. Back.
Yep.
All right. Who do you have as your next player?
Yeah. So my next guy, I'm looking at DeForest Buckner. And you're going to kind of see my MO here. Like it's just another guy that, has been very consistent throughout his career. There's a lot to like about DeForest Buckner. One of my favorite things about him is just that he's played in almost every football game of his career. He's only missed 2 football games through his first 8 seasons, actually, and has played in every game over the past 3 seasons with the Colts. He just had his best season fantasy-wise last year, recorded 250.65 fantasy points in Big 3 scoring, and that was good for 24th overall amongst all IDP players. And looking at the ADP right there, that's already a value, right? A couple points down. Another thing that I love about Buckner, though, is he's got the big playability for sure. He's flirting with double-digit sacks every season, but he does have that nice high tackle floor where, he's not going to put up duds every week that some of these other edge rushers might that don't have the tackle floor. He had 81 tackles last season with his 8 sacks. So, Buckner rarely burned managers and still provided, those big plays that can kind of help to win you your week. And also just was a stud in terms of PFF. Both of us have been talking about the grades today, and obviously it's something that you have to take into consideration. Ranked 12th amongst interior defenders with an overall PFF grade of 81.8 and had an 87.1 pass rush grade. So he's getting to the quarterback. He was doing his thing. But yeah, just put the price here, man. Like he's a guy I've been targeting. Got him in 3 drafts. In the 3 I've come away with him. I was able to get him in the 3rd round once. In the 3rd round with the earliest pick actually being 301. And then later on being 308 for the other picks there. So, you can get him close to that 4th round point there. So if I'm doing one of these builds I was talking about earlier where I'm targeting guys like Lavonte or Josey Jewell, Buckner's a great guy in the 3rd round to complement like a a TJ Watt, and then maybe a Trey Hendrickson or something. If you can go rounds 2 and 3, Trey Hendrickson, DeForest Buckner with TJ Watt, and then go snag like Lavonte and Josey your next couple of rounds, like that's the kind of build I've been trying to go for in a lot of these drafts. And I feel like it's got the floor, but all those players I mentioned obviously have like that week winning upside as well. Yeah, so kind of for all those reasons, I've been all over him.
Yeah, I think it can feel a little uncomfortable to go D tackle that early. You know, sometimes it feels like you're just going for a single and not the home run. But I draft
Absolutely.
DeForest quite a bit as well. I just like him a lot as a player. You know that he's going to produce, and yeah, he probably won't have like game breaking upside, but at that point, who really does in the third round? I'm totally fine taking the guy with maybe the highest floor of any D tackle. He just produces every year, and I love guys like that.
For sure, man.
All righty. My next player is Odafe Oweh, edge rusher for the Ravens. He's got an ADP of 136 right now. The biggest thing for me is that Oweh improved significantly between 2022 and 2023. So in pressure rate, he improved from 10% to 15%. In pass rush grade, he improved from 67 to 77. And in pass rush win rate, he improved to 15 to 23%. And all of those numbers rank top 20 among edge rushers. However, if you look at the stat sheet, you'll notice that he only had like 6 or 5.5 sacks. He's never been above 6 sacks in a season. And this is really just due, once again, to a very low pressure to sack rate, just 9.3%, which, you know, I love targeting guys like that. It's probably going to regress because it is mostly a random event, you know, turning pressures into sacks. So I'm really hoping that Oweh can get a little more luck in that department this year. And another benefit is that Jadeveon Clowney left this offseason. So I think Oweh is primed for a career high in snaps. So if he can maintain that efficiency, get a little bit of luck, I think that we could be looking at a true breakout and one of the best young edge rushers in the league, maybe top 15 even.
I'm with you, man. I like Oweh a lot. I mean, even just looking at Pro Football Reference here, like as you mentioned, like it looks like the most games he's started so far in a season throughout his career, his first 3 years, is 6 back in 2022. Started 5 games last season. Did play in 13, but I mean, so that's limited playing time, and he still put up 5.5 sacks, like you mentioned. You know, you got to think like if he starts in 17 games next season, like, you know, that just from the playing time increase alone, like I'm sure he'll be a guy that's flirting with double digits, if not achieving them as early as next season. So at that ADP of 136, I like it a lot for sure. And the tackles have been there too, honestly, for the playing time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of those guys. He's also dual Desi, which in that range, I kind of use it as a tiebreaker. It's really nice because you can fill 2 lineup spots with 1 player, which always feels really good.
You got to take that into consideration for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's not like a huge part of it in these 31 round best balls, but I do think so. For IDP Madness, we're going to trim down to 24 rounds, and I think in that format, the dual Desi becomes a lot more important. So I'll be targeting these guys heavily. And I also listed Za'Darius Smith. He's another dual Desi guy. I believe Gardeck has the tag. I'm not exactly sure. But if he doesn't, it's really dumb because he actually does play linebacker. So, all righty, let's get to your next player.
All right, man. Yeah, so you can kind of see I have a type with these old head linebackers, but I'm going Demario Davis, LB 39 in terms of ADP right now, 97.4 as you see there. He's a guy that I got in 3 out of my 8 drafts, so another 38% exposure. But you know, he's played in all 17 games last season, even at his age. He's only actually missed 2 games since 2013. So he's 35 years old now, just about, but still plays super fast. 121 tackles last year, 6.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 11 QB hits, forced fumble, and recovery to boot. So, I mean, he stuffed the stat sheet really last season. And like, you know, he might be LB 39 in terms of ADP, but those aren't LB 39 numbers. And those are the kind of guys I like to target. He's recorded over 100 tackles in every season since 2017. So he's another one of these guys, just like a Lavonte, where he's shown that he can do it year in and year out. And, you know, father time's always creeping up there. And it's kind of like playing hot potato. Like, you never know what year it's going to be where they kind of fall off a cliff. But, you know, just in terms of his situation, I don't see that being next season. I know they just re-signed Pete Werner, but that's going to be the guy playing beside him, if anything. Yeah, they got Willie Gay there and Kaliki Hudson, but, you know, he's still the leader of that defense. He's an every down guy. You know, where I'm getting him, I like it a lot. In Best Ball 22 with you, I think, Evan, I got him at pick 901. So pick 97, which is right at that ADP. And, you know, right around there, I'm happy. It looks like my other selection with him was pick 96. So it's right around that range kind of thing. And, you know, for a guy that was the number 3 ranked linebacker on PFF last year, who had a 89.6 grade overall, like, I'm stoked to get him there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that I have generally not been targeting the New Orleans linebackers just because while I know that Demario is a very good football player, no doubt about that, I am just a little bit worried about that cliff. It's going to come eventually. I don't know if it's this year. I don't know if it's next year. But they also are just very deep at linebacker with Werner and Gay and Hudson. And I don't really know who's going to. I guess Pete's going to play the LB2 role, and I would assume that Demario plays the LB1 role at least to start the season.
It's so strange because, like with the contract, you'd think it's Werner. But I was watching like Good Morning Football or something, and Willie Gay was doing an interview on the field during training camp, and he was talking about how he's excited for playing more of a 3-down role. So I'm with you. Like, there's risk in this pick for sure. And it's not like some pick in the 200s. Like, we're still talking about in the top 100. So it's one of those ones where I'm kind of taking on that risk a little bit and just hoping that this kind of isn't the year where he falls off the balance sort of thing and stays in that range of getting his 100 tackles like he has every season, playing in all 17 games type of deal. But there's certainly an element of risk baked in there for sure.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm not worried about really his play when he's on the field. I think the only way he would fall off is if he has some injuries. Maybe it's a long-term injury. Maybe it's just a short-term injury that takes him off the field for third downs or something.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm not worried about his play, really. He's just a very good player. All righty. Now we're going to go to my next player, which is Devonte Wyatt, D tackle for the Packers. He's got an ADP of 232.9 right now. Last year, among D tackles, Wyatt ranked 7th in pressure rate, 11th in pass rush grade, and 11th in true pass set win rate. Head into this third season, I expect Wyatt to play over 700 snaps. He was pretty close to that last year. And while they didn't really lose anybody on that defensive line, I expect them to prioritize Wyatt more because of these advanced metrics that make him, really paint him as one of the up-and-coming D tackles in the league. And you can get him in like the 19th round. I've seen him go super late, like the 23rd, 24th round even. He's one of those guys that you can just scoop up late. I love it.
I think that's a good one, man, for sure. That's one of those ones too, right? Where it's like you're at that kind of part of the draft where you're just trying to find guys that are either going to get the opportunity to get in there and get some playing time and that kind of thing. So when you can target a guy like Wyatt, that, got 5.5 sacks last season, has shown that some kind of sort of flashes that he has that upside potential, like, I'm all for it. Those are the swings you got to take for sure.
Yeah, and I'm also interested in Kenny Clark. He has a very late ADP as well. I've been drafting him some too. I have 6 shares of Wyatt in my 15 leagues, so fairly high exposure as well. Okay, to finish us off here, why don't we just rapid fire through the rest of our picks? I think you have 2 more, so go ahead.
Yeah, man. So the first one here is Trey Hendrickson. Not like any sort of like, deep value thing. He's obviously, you can look at the ADP 19.4. He's just kind of one of these guys, like I was saying earlier, these builds that I'm targeting where I go 2 edge rushers to start. I really like Trey at that number 2 spot. He's just a guy you can get in round, maybe mid 2, early 3 kind of thing. I mean, I got him at as early as pick 205. And then a couple other drafts, I got him at 212 and 301, I believe. So he's right around that kind of late second range. And, if you're a team like me, luckily I have a couple of times that gets the first overall pick and you're going like TJ Watt, he's just a great guy, I find, coming back to get if you want to get like a nice 1-2 punch. You got Watt, you got Hendrickson, or like Bosa and Hendrickson, whoever it may be. He's just a great compliment, I find. Had a pass rush grade of 90.7 on PFF last year. That's good for 6th amongst all edge rushers. Showed he's got some total big play upside, dropping 34.5 points in week 5 against the Cardinals. So, he's one of these guys that can be a week winner for sure. With, my heavy exposure with Trey, I'm definitely hoping it's a repeat of last year. In 2022, he did regress a little bit more. I think he actually fell below double-digit sacks that season. So I'm hoping he kind of maintains what he was doing last season. And the latest reports I've seen is he's at camp. He's doing his thing. So, yeah, hopefully with Trey, he can keep it up and, prove me right there.
Yeah, I love that. I would say that I'm willing to take Trey Hendrickson at 203 at the highest. I just feel so much more comfortable with Trey versus the other players in that second round. Similar to offensive drafts, the second round is just a very hard place to draft because you got these up-and-coming young guys that could take the next step, or you got kind of these boring old vets that maybe don't have the upside we're looking for. So Trey Hendrickson is generally my target in the second round.
I got a really quick question for you. An interesting comparison. Would you rather go Trey or Montez Sweat in the early second?
For me, it's Trey pretty easily. We've seen him produce. The PFF metrics are much better. There you go. So that makes it pretty simple for me.
Right on. I agree.
Awesome. All right, let's go to my last player now, Jahlani Tavai, linebacker for the Patriots. Last year, Tavai ranked 3rd in PFF grade, 7th in run defense grade, 6th in coverage grade, and he played a high percentage of his snaps rushing the passer. And despite that heavy pass rush usage, he was able to maintain average tackle efficiency, which is pretty impressive given the usage. In 2024, he should see close to a full-time role again. I love his blend of volume and usage. I think it gives him a solid floor and a solid ceiling. And at an ADP of linebacker 69, I love taking Jahlani Tavai as one of my last position players before I start DB.
Yeah, right there, pick 202. I'm with you. Like, that's a guy that he's been getting more and more playing time each season. Started around 57% in terms of defensive snaps. But, looking back to last year, 74% of the defensive snaps, and he's putting up numbers kind of thing. So if that increases even more, that looks like an even better pick too there, right? So I'm with you. It's a good pick at that range for sure.
Great. All right. Thank you guys for joining us on this week's edition of IDP Drafts. You can follow Jackson on Twitter at iDynastyP. He recently has a new article on the IDPshow.com that you should check out that goes over some of these same players, but also some different ones. So make sure to give that a read. And I believe there's also a new feature that got announced today, right, Jackson?
There sure is, man. Yeah, we got a trade calculator on the site. So if you go to iDynastyP.com, it's right in the toolbar for you there at the top. You can go in there. We got every player that's included in our dynasty rankings is in the trade calculator, and then all offense too. So we got like the rookies this year, all the deep sleepers, all that kind of stuff. So we got a mix of offensive and defensive players. Go in there, play around, see how you can fleece your league mates.
Yeah, it's a super cool tool. I have no idea how he did it, but it is amazing stuff. All right. And you can also follow me on Twitter at EvanRinglerFF. You can also catch me on Player Profiler shows now and then. You can also come draft with us in IDP Madness. It's almost filled, but we would love to have you in there. Come win some of our money. All right.
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
joining us.